Zach, have you heard about this Kirk Cignetti fella?
He's a pretty good coach.
I've heard that he knows what he's doing. He has the Hoosiers ranked 23 in the nation. They're 5-0 for the first time since 1967, and they're trying to stay unbeaten against Northwestern. I will be rooting heavily for Indiana in this one because if Indiana loses, I will have to wear a hot dog costume on the show for an entire week. But first year head coach Kirk Cignetti says his team is on a mission. Indiana 2-0 in the Big Ten is coming off a 42-28 win versus Maryland despite early turnovers. Curtis Rourke threw for 359 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also had 2 interceptions versus Maryland. The Northwestern Wildcats are 2-2, 0-1 in the Big Ten, and they're trying to bounce back from a 24-5 loss to Washington 2 weeks ago. The Wildcats QB Jack Louse struggled with 112 passing yards or total offensive yards and 2 interceptions. Northwestern may get leading rusher Cam Porter back from injury. However, Indiana's wide receiver Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper Jr. are key threats, both scoring last week. Northwestern actually leads this series all time, 47-35-1. Zach, what stands out to you in this game?
I think Northwestern. I hesitate to say this, but I think Northwestern actually poses a bit more of a threat to Indiana than people might want to give credit for because of the style of play. Northwestern wants to junk you up on defense. They're physical. I said I have a man crush on Xander Mueller. Like, he is a traditional Big Ten linebacker.
He's a very good linebacker. Yes.
He's very good. I think the defensive line for them is actually pretty underrated. And so I think this is a low scoring game in the first half. I think it also helps that it is on the lake. It's at Northwestern. It's gonna be more of a home field advantage for Northwestern, which I think it does. It does matter for them. I think the question that I have is Indiana going to be content, to kind of wait on their explosive plays? Because I think if not, I think Northwestern actually could have a chance in this game to make you wear a hot dog suit. But
I don't
yeah,
think so. Northwestern will get crushed in this one. No disrespect to David Braun, but the only thing Northwestern has going for them in this one is they have allowed 15.8 points per game, but Indiana has also only allowed 13 points per game in this one. And I don't like Zach. I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying that the defense is good and they're gonna junk them
yep.
up, but at the end of the day, like this Indiana team, they've scored so many points in every single game. Like I think Northwestern has had very good defensive performances against like I'm trying to pull up the schedule really fast, but off the top of my head, like they've had good defensive performances against Washington, who scored 19 points against Washington State, right? They had a good defensive performance against Duke, who they got shut out by North Carolina after North Carolina. Well, I don't know if they got shut out. I think they were shut out in the first
Mhm.
half after North Carolina gave up like 70 points to James Madison. Miami of Ohio, they only gave up 6 points. Eastern Illinois, they only gave up 7. Like, I,
Mhm.
they gave up 26 to Duke. So, like, I don't know. Like I always hate the well, who have they played thing, right? Because I think that gets
Mhm.
so overused, and it is such a stupid thing to talk about, especially when you're talking about some of these good teams. Like you are just looking at how does the team play, but of course not everybody watches every game, so they just revert to well, who have they
Yeah.
played, and it's like well, that's stupid. But when I watch Northwestern play, they have been lights out against Eastern Illinois and Miami of Ohio. They they let
Yeah.
Washington score more points on them than they scored against Washington State. Miami of Ohio, yes, they only put up 6 points. I know this is a good MAC team, but still, it's a MAC team. Like we just read off two MAC teams that are rushing with two of the three worst yards per game
And
in
UCLA.
the nation. So,
Um,
like, I respect your opinion, but I can't get there
well,
with you, man.
let
Like,
let me push back just a little bit. I mean, I agree with you. Like, I think I'm saying I think this could look bad in the first half.
okay, I can get with that.
Yeah. And I think if Northwestern had a credible offensive threat outside of Cam Porter, I think Cam Porter will have a good game in this game. Respect, good game. 4 yards a carry. Like that's
Yeah,
what I mean by good game.
I could see that happening. Cam Porter's a good
I
back.
I think the difference between like what could be an upset alert versus Indiana is that I think the poise of Indiana has just been off the charts, and I think they have too many playmakers.
Yeah.
So, but I'll just say this: I agree with your assessment. This does kind of feel like the game that everybody writes Northwestern off on, and then is like, how did Northwestern win that one? Which I don't think that'll happen because I think this Indiana squad has just a different feel to it. But it's just one of those games where you're like, is Northwestern going to do something like last year? I felt like we had the same thought about them 4 or 5 weeks into the season. Like they were like 2-4, 1-5, and then all of a sudden they
Yeah.
spring an upset. So I agree with your assessment. I'm just saying, just Northwestern in general has that weird feel where they come up and get you at the most random times, and you're like, how did that happen? And I think there could be that feeling at halftime.
I can get with you that it could be, I don't know if a close game, but Indiana could score less points at halftime than maybe they normally do. I could see a game where it's like Indiana 17 and Northwestern 7 or something like that at halftime. And it's kind of like, oh, not that we're concerned, but,
Yeah.
Indiana has done better in the first half than this. And Northwestern's not a good football team, but then they come out in the second half. My score prediction in this one is 31-10. I do think Indiana, their offense struggles a little bit
Yeah.
more just because I do respect Northwestern's defense. But I don't see this being a fight in the fourth quarter
Yeah.
or anything like that. Like I said, I can see like 17-7, possibly 10-7 if there's a turnover or something like that. But I think Kirk Cignetti goes into the goes into the locker room and tears everybody apart and says, "Get out there and win the game." And then they go out and win because he said, "You
Yeah.
got students that aren't studying to watch these games."
That's hilarious. Our scores are actually pretty similar. I have 31-13.
Okay, all right, so we're pretty similar. All right.